Welcome to Tales of Hope, where every paw print counts. Animal tie in the house, spreading love, hear the sounds. Every week animal stories, rights and welfare in the mix. Step up, take action, we're giving animals a fix. Tales of Hope, raise your voice, make some noise. Change the game for every animal, girl and boy. One world, one fight, let's turn the page. A future for the voiceless, bring hope to center stage.
Now, you're exploring on-the-spot treatment to avoid unnecessary hospitalization. What triage protocol, kits, and televet support would make this safe and scalable for volunteers?
In fact, we had drawn up a whole protocol list. We had two very good paravets on board. One of them had been trained at Animal Aid Unlimited in Udaipur. And he had his partner, an equally good paravet, a young girl. So they had come on board. We had worked out the entire system of what they would have, and they were going to train 4 more, so that there were 6 of them to reach out to calls from all over the city. So what they would have in that first aid kit, the basic medication, the basic saline, the injections needed for pain management or vomiting and things like that. But we were just not able to raise the funding for that. So we had to we've shelved it for the moment till we can get somebody to fund that, because it does cost. But we had it all worked out. Even the televet support, they worked with 2 vets whom they consulted. And we felt that if they wished to stick to those vets, we would of course found out a little more about them, and we would leave it at that, because they had their comfort level with those 2 vets who were also open to giving televet services, as well as if there was a crisis, the animal could be taken to the vet clinic. So we had it all organized. Unfortunately, as I said, we couldn't get it off the ground because we tried very hard for funding, but it just didn't. We couldn't. So we've stayed still there as a hope. Everything on Paws and Hope is a hope till we can make it materialize. But they would be given it was worked out that at the beginning of the month they would pick up some stock that could last the month, like cotton wool, betadine, things like that. Some medicines that would have to be bought depending on the situation, they would have to produce bills for, and then they would be reimbursed. So everything was worked out. The whole protocol had been laid down, but it's there still on paper right now.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. Now, shelter ethics with limited sanctuary spots. How do you decide intake, manage palliative care, end-of-life care, and ensure every resident has dignity, enrichment, and choice?
Anil, because my shelter is very small, the Paws and Hope shelter, as I said, is capacity for 15. I have 5 very large, airy enclosures. They have their platform where their chockies are, their water is, where their food is given, and they have a huge open space in front, each of those enclosures, which have trees and things which have grown in the last 3 years since I moved here. It was nothing. It was just rubble and dry, barren land before that. So because the number is small, only 15, and we are very insistent that we will not take in more, because I'm repeating myself, because shelter is not the primary objective, requiring a lot of funds, but not the primary objective. And it is something that I personally do myself. So I think I would be foolish to say that I want to look after 100 dogs and I don't have the wherewithal to do it. So we take in cases, as I said, there were 3 20-year-olds living in one of the enclosure. 2 were partially blind and very heavy. So they had mobility issues and arthritic joints. One was the spinous cancer. Very thin dog, no matter what he ate, that was his build, but he was wasting away with the penis cancer. So he was on basically palliative care. So every medicine administration is done by me. They're looking after through the day. I am with them literally morning and evening. I have 1 staff in the morning and 1 at night, and they're villagers. The idea is to get the locals involved. It's a job for them, so there's an income, and it creates some kind of goodwill in the villages. But I have to be also careful in terms of like the two aggressive dogs whom we have in the shelter. I don't let the boys go in there because I cannot have an incident. Then nobody will want to work.
Absolutely.
So I have to respect that fear. So it's only me who goes in there, and my daughter, when she's in town, she goes in there. Otherwise, now that you can say that's an additional load for me, but one, I don't look upon it as a load, and I'd rather do that than have an incident and then have the whole village here, furious and angry. It doesn't take much to get a mob going. So the palliative care is always in consultation with the vet. I have paravet support here, and the numbers. I get requests a lot of the time. I get requests a lot of time for aggressive dogs in the neighborhoods. I have to say no because of the reasons I just mentioned. I have just got a couple of days ago requests for three very old dogs who are being attacked by the younger dogs. I will probably take in one because one of the dogs has died, so there is one enclosure has space. But I do tell them that look, they have to be. I will do my best to socialize, but sometimes it doesn't work. Then we have to think of or I cannot have biting and fighting, instances. So most of the time it works. All those who have come in have all actually settled down. They sometimes they fight at the nets between themselves, but then there's in that initial few minutes of wanting to tear each other down, then they go back to their platforms and all's okay with the world again. So that having 15 as a ceiling helps me to, I have to say no. I feel terrible, but I just have to say no. There's nothing that can be done because I will not compromise the quality of care to take in more. It would be foolish of me because I don't believe in spreading oneself thin and then ruining it at the end of the day. I will try my best to offer support elsewhere, like we did as a group for this three-legged dog who we got sheltered at another much larger shelter. We raised the funds. We said we'll help you. We will raise the funds. We can't shelter the dog. That lady did ask me. I said my amputee enclosure already has three, and one of those dogs is very aggressive. She's okay with her too, but any other dog she will pounce on. I said, I cannot risk this one's life. So we will help you raise the funds, and we raise the entire 20,000. So we do try to help in that respect. If we can't offer shelter, we try and find an alternative and we try and raise the funds because we have that advantage of being able to reach out to friends, acquaintances, family who do help, with whatever they are able to give.
Absolutely wonderful. Now, many rescues are trauma laden or senior. What's your behavior rehab playbook like? Decompression, muzzle training, enrichment, and your adoption guardrails to prevent re-abandonment.
See, as those with behavioral issues, especially if they're aggression, I have to say no to because I already have two aggressive dogs. I cannot risk a huge fight breaking out even the help. Initially it was reluctant because they have to pick up the potty and things, and they only got used to it when they saw me doing it, that I pick up the potty, I clean their vomit, and then their their resistance came down. So it's very difficult to find a shelter help who will not only be kind, compassionate, and willing and pick up potty. I mean, you have to hope for a miracle. So I have to make it easier for them. I have to think of that. There is just no other way. If I want to retain them, I also have to be a part of the process and make it bearable for them. So aggressive dogs, we don't have the scope for taking in more. Those who come with fear-related issues, I spend a lot of time with them in their initial days, settling them down. I get extra help in for those days whilst they're settling down so that there is somebody, apart from the one boy who was there cleaning out the enclosures and things like that, there is another person there in the enclosure where the new dog has come in, just to be sitting to prevent any sudden aggression, to keep talking to them, and I keep going in. So we do all that for the first few days. I always urge the rescuer to bring the dog himself or herself and stay a couple of hours with the dog to let that dog get over the initial fear of a new place, and they're happy to do so. They never say no. And then they gradually, you sort of withdraw gradually, and the dog by that time has settled down, has become a little quiet after the rescuer has been with them for those first 2 to 3 hours, and I have been there, and this extra help has been there. So that once that comfort zone has been established, then the rescuer steps back. So that's how we tend to do it. And the extra help comes in for 2 3 days after that, just to manage the situation. And they have, as I said, they have these large enclosures, but they're also brought out onto the front lawn twice a day for 40 minutes each time, where they can just roll around on the grass, bark at everybody who's going in front of the gate, and that's their favorite occupation. They will, and my 3 amputees, I think, would put any sprinter to shame. They don't think they have a problem. They think they're sort of king of the pops, and they race to the gate and yell their heads off at anybody who happens to pass by. So, and they love doing all that. So they do that twice a day. They chew through my garden pipes, they dig up the grass, and they roll around, they run around, a couple of the slightly younger ones. So they get there, they're not stuck in that enclosure 24/7. They come out in the morning, and they have to come out in their groups. Otherwise, I would have bloodshed on my hands. As far as following up on adoption, whatever cases we have been successful with, we keep in touch with the adoptive family through requesting for photographs, videos, not on a daily basis or regular, but off and on, just send us news how the dog is doing. And always they sign an adoption form. That formality is observed. And always with the clause that if you have a problem, please don't throw him or her out. Just return the dog to us. We will figure out what to do. So far, none of our cases have gone awry. So far, whatever we have helped out with, sometimes directly, sometimes as a support to someone else, those dogs are happy in their new homes. Some are still alive. One or two have passed on. One dog, a Labrador, she was abandoned. And a friend of mine took her in. She lived for just 8 months with the adoptive family, but her 8 months were pure love and pure joy, which she never got most of her life. So you have to, we look at it as, okay, it was only 8 months, but they were the best 8 months of her life. And she went knowing that she was loved.
Absolutely.
That's how we try and, maintain the adoption, happy adoption cycle. And always that if you have a problem, please let us know. We will help. I have 2 ex-students who are working as therapists, animal therapists now, and they love what they do. They stay in constant touch with me. So sometimes they go and help out the families and talk to the families. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and then we say, please, then just return the dog. We'll figure out the next step, but give the dog back to us. Don't dump her or him on the road or somewhere else. So far, it's not happened.
But I think most importantly, what you mentioned is a very good point. Don't abandon him. Send it back to us and we'll take care of it. Because what happens is, in most of the cases, what I know, if we look at social media today, almost on daily basis, there are like 30 to 50 cases that, and it's such a sad, and the worst part is, I have seen a lot of people, instead of trying to find a solution, they are into naming and shaming that person.
Yeah.
So, it is something, rather than, if you can't help, don't say anything, because you have not stepped in the foot of that person. You don't know what the problem that person is facing. It could be financial distress, family distress. There could be so many reasons for him or her even to arrive at a situation where they say, hey, we want to, let it go. But I think it's a very sad state what we have. But what you do is really, really, commendable, because when you say, at least that if something goes wrong, the kid will come back to you, and then it can be taken care of.
We always say that wherever we have helped, we tell them, and we hope they honor that if you have a problem, please let us know. We will try with help from people who are trained in how to help with problem cases. Even if that doesn't work, then you give the dog back to us. We'll figure out. We can't say what we will do, but we will figure it out. You
Absolutely.
can't have the dog going onto the street. That's just an absolute no.
Absolute. That's an absolute disaster, to be honest. Anyways, as long as a long time educator, how do you design empathy education for schools so children become calm first responders rather than bystanders, and how do you track attitude change? This was
Um,
something I think we were discussing
Yeah,
when
we
we
were
were
discussing earlier. I think, as I said, first empathy has to come out from a moral science textbook. In any case, those textbooks are so utterly useless. It's just not funny. It has to be practiced by the teachers first and foremost, because children learn more by watching and observing than they do from any academic lesson. So I think, if empathy is actively taught by teachers walking their talk, and this I used to do it. I always taught senior school classes 9 to 12, and I would tell the kids that you have to do one act of kindness every day, whatever it is. It doesn't matter, but you may wipe the kitchen table for your mother, you may help an elderly person across the road, you see an animal in need, you call me. If you feel confident enough of calling the hospital directly, I will help you. But one small, big, nobody's measuring the size. It's one act where you stepped out of your comfort zone to help another life. And they would come back the next day, a lot of them, and say, I did this, I did this. And the idea was to create that atmosphere in class where no act would be belittled, that, oh, you only did that and I did this. There was never anything of that sort. So they felt comfortable about sharing. So I think we have to do that as teachers in our classrooms. And a lot of it comes in how we talk to the children, how we approach them, how we. I had a fabulous B.Ed head. She was an Irish nun, and I learned more from her. She had been a principal and teacher for 35 years of her life before she came to Loreto College as the B.Ed head. And I learned more from her classroom experiences than I learned from any textbook. And she would tell us things like, when you see a child in the class who's quiet, most teachers think, oh, such a good child, doesn't create any problems. But most often, those quiet children are the one with problems, abusive homes, hunger, problems of between parents and the child watching it all. And she says those are the ones you actually have to watch out for. So, we as teachers, we have to get out of our comfort zone by actively engaging with the children in a kind manner, because how else are the children going to learn? They're not going to learn from a textbook. They're going to learn by watching us. And those children who wanted to help with animals, I would always say, you see something on the road, call me. And they've done that, man. They still do it. Right now, they're not my students anymore. They're all young adults. But they call me, ma'am, we've seen this. This is happening. What do we do? If they're unable to make calls themselves because they feel a little hesitant, I make the calls for them. Some of them make the calls on their own, and I say you have to wait at the spot. You cannot just call, report, and vanish. You have to wait there till help comes, and they've done it. In fact, just a few days back, this ex-student of mine, there was a problem with a dog in one of the buildings in Calcutta, and his friend reported it to him, had a huge wound and was not being, they couldn't catch him. So this boy told me, ma'am, I will go there when the van is about to reach, I will go there. And he stays about 10 kilometers away, but he went there and they saw the dog, but they couldn't catch the dog because he was running in fear. So that understanding has to be there, that I will be at the spot. It's not enough for me to report. I must also be there to point out the animal, to try and help. So this is how we've tried to work it, that if you're going to report an incident, you have to carry it through. You can't just report and vanish. You can't pay for it, it's fine. We would try and arrange the funds. But report, make calls, wait there till help
arrives.
come. Or get a local involved where the animal can be kept safely and is not in the middle of the road or on the side of the road. Do all that. We had a cat that was reported to us I think last month. He had been lying on the road, didn't make it, it died, but was lying on the road for 3 days, dehydrated, injured. The person who reported waited over there till the paravet came. The paravet took him to the vet clinic. Didn't make it because the damage was far too severe. But the idea is waiting. You have to be there. You have to show up, basically.
Absolutely. Now, volunteer safety and well being. What boundaries or debrief rituals and peer system supports prevent burnout when rescues go wrong or a hits hard, like you just mentioned?
See, I think those of us who've been in the space for long enough, we know that not every case is going to be successful. There is going to be damage, there is going to be grief, there is going to be loss. And we have to deal with it. It happens with humans, it happens with animals. So, in our own group, we lend one another that support. We are there for one another. I'm saying this all the time, but it's not to sound like a broken tape recorder, but as a group, the members are just incredible. They just come forth on every occasion, no matter what it is, and they're there for the other person. So we have learned to, it's not easy, but we've learned that yes, that there will be a case that does not go right. There will be a rescue we can't get to on time. We can't get the ambulance there on time. There will be a dog that has been admitted into the hospital but has unfortunately died during treatment because it was too far gone. I think we try and tell ourselves that we tried to do the best that we could. And a dog who it didn't go well, at least whatever, it didn't die uncared for. Hopefully it carried with him or her that somebody reached out to me. I didn't die on the road, starving, dehydrated, unattended. And again, we've got calls from people, random people whom we don't even know, but somebody has given my number, Seema's number, someone else's number, dog lying in this market, that market. Can you please help? We have shifted it to a safer place. Now, all this only happens when it's like a ripple effect when the message that you're trying to get across, someone else picks up, carries it on. So that ripple effect works greatly, even when dealing with grief, because you say, okay, I did my best. For that day, that was my best. Maybe tomorrow I'll do better by a dog, but for that day, that was my best. And we try and support one another through that. That carrying that grief, and we share it on the group. I think that helps a lot also, just breaking down in the group. It just helps that you have some sympathy, empathetic ears listening.
Absolutely. Now, you rely on trusted NGOs by vet facilities. How do you vet partners standardize quality and share data while protecting animal and rescuer privacy?
A lot of the time we leave the hospital choice to the caregiver because they feel comfortable with certain hospitals. And some of it is also area centric, like a hospital in South Calcutta will be unwilling to send their ambulance to a place in remote North Calcutta because the traffic here in the city is so disastrous. Time taken is long. In that time, they would have picked up more rescues in South Calcutta. So we leave it to them where they feel comfortable, where they have an established track record. And we are okay with it as long as we know that that hospital does an honest job. Cases go wrong in every hospital, as I said, whether human or animal. That is something we have to learn to accept and not blame. Blaming never solves the problem. There are human errors in all places. As I said, we have to just keep doing the best we can at that given point in time. So once the caregiver says, I would like to send it to hospital X, I feel comfortable with them, my dogs always come back safe and sound, we say, fine, you connect with the hospital. Once you've told them of when you want the pickup, you let me know, then I will connect with them because the payment is routed never to the individual. We always remit payment directly to the hospital or the clinic. Because as a trust, I have to, and as the founder trustee, I'm accountable for every rupee that comes in and goes out, and I have to furnish it at the end of the year to the accountant, and our returns are audited and everything. So I'm accountable for who the money goes to. So I said that once you have made that connect with the hospital of your choice and you're happy that the hospital will do good by you, you let me know, then I will speak to them for the payment. Your interaction with the hospital is related to the dog. My interaction with the hospital is related as far as the payment is concerned. And that is how we ensure the privacy, because we don't get involved in sharing details of the dog with the hospital. We leave it to the feeder, the rescuer, the caregiver, because he or she knows best. We are literally the third party. So we don't want to get involved because it is actually, we don't know much about it, so we shouldn't get involved. It has to be between hospital and the person concerned. If any data is shared with us and we are specifically told, please tell the caregiver this or please tell the hospital that, only then we do it. Otherwise, we don't get involved in sharing details, because it results in endless confusion. Too many cooks spoil the broth, as they say. So we step out. Once the payment issue is sorted out, our role is done. We only tell the person, please give us updates once in a while since we have paid for the treatment. I need to put it on the group that the dog is doing well, not doing well, the dog has passed away, the dog has returned. So please keep us updated.
Perfect. Now, can you walk us through the Shelter Care Fund? Its target, runaway, monthly cost per animal, and how micro donations by CSR can create a predictable care instead of crisis fundraising.
Our small shelter, as I said, of 15 dogs and 7 or 8 cats. We had 8, one passed away, the 7 is the 8th one probably coming in an accident case. It costs us about 1 lakh to run, with food, medicines, electricity, water, salaries, infrastructure maintenance. There's a lot of infrastructure work. The net gets rusted, has to be repainted. Platforms, sometimes cracks appear, mending has to be done. It's a daily routine if one is running a shelter. And though it's a small shelter, it still needs maintenance. So it amounts to about 1 lakh a month, which works out to about 5,000 rupees per animal. Keeping all these requirements and keeping a little extra in the month for something that suddenly, may come up to pay for those costs. And if we fall short, then we put out an appeal in the group, and then we are reaching out to friends and family and well-wishers. And so far it's worked. We did have a shelter sponsor, but they had to unfortunately withdraw at the beginning of this year. So right now it's still on a lot of one-time donations that came in. We're still working on how to get a shelter support, because it has to be regular. It has to be something that comes in every month, because there are so many lives. There are 23 lives who are dependent on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we are working on that. We're hopeful that something will come across. As Mr. Mikoba said, something will turn up.
Absolutely. Now, after formalizing a trust in 2020, that's what you said, Paws in Hope was registered. What decisions did you change? And what transparency would you like every city rescue to adopt?
Decisions would be decisions in the way the group functions. See, now all our, when we became a formal trust, we had to have a bank account, our Aadhaar card, and, not Aadhaar card, PAN card for the trust. So all those formalities were completed. We have recently enrolled ourselves as a Darpan with the Darpan card as well, because that was mandated earlier on in the year. So we have done that as well. We are in the process of applying for CSR funding. We didn't have that because we've been now 5 years as a formal trust. Before that, we were an informal group. So we were taking up everything one at a time, so that we were not stressed with too many things on the plate. Our accounts are audited every year. They go to the auditor and it's audited. I put the entire audit report out in the group, so everybody knows what is going on. All payments that are made, I put on the group so that people know. So if 11 dogs have been sent for sterilization, 2 for treatment, once the payment is made, I put that banking transaction on the group, as well as the receipt that comes in thereafter, that also goes on. So everybody in the group is aware what is going on. There is nothing hidden from anybody, because it's not fair whether they are contributing X or Y. We have a minimum amount that all of us contribute as group members. Some give more, uh, and some, instead of giving cash, say provide rice for the month for X amount or whatever, but they contribute in the way they feel comfortable with. So everything goes out onto the group. The gentleman who contributes the rice, the person it goes to, a photograph is taken of him taking the rice, so that everybody on the group knows, yes, the rice has gone to the feeder that has been identified. So all the formalities in terms of accounting are followed. All for, in other respects of support, financial support that comes in, it is immediately somebody gives a one-time grant, someone's friend, that is put on the group, so that people know that there are others also who are helping. Nothing is kept a secret. The entire group is aware. And our audited reports from 2020 have always been in order. There has never been a problem with our reports, that the other statements that we have submitted. Everything, touch wood, so far has been okay. Yeah.
Keeping fingers crossed. And
And for other, other institutions or other NGOs, I think there has to be constant communication. It is not, I may be the founder trustee, but we are all in it together. I am nothing on my own. I am the clerk. I tell them I am the clerk. I do hisab. I'm very bad on the computer, so I have my khata, my register. So I work like that. But it is all, everybody knows what is going on. Nobody in the group can say, I was not aware or I don't know. That is, I think that has to be there. There has to be a constant communication amongst group members. Good, bad, ugly, disappointment, whatever it is, there has to be that space for people to express themselves, and then resolutions to come out of that. So that I would advocate. Transparency is an absolute must. Communication amongst group members is an absolute must. And it's not one person's success, it's the group doing the work together. We are all spokes of the wheel, and we turn the wheel together.
Absolutely. You just rightly said everything. Now, street injuries often involve trains and traffic. What prevention advocacy would you advocate for either the railways or the municipal corporation or the signage, probably night feeding timing, community waste management is actually moving the needle?
We've done small things, like, because we are still a very local based group. We would love to be nationwide and national, but that requires a lot of collaboration, a lot of citizen support. Maybe we will be one day, maybe we won't, but even as a small group, one can have a large impact. So we have sponsored those what are those colors which shine in the dark now? Forget.
Signage is okay.
Those colors that are reflective.
Yes, reflective colors. Yes,
we have sponsored them, so that at least the animal is visible at night. Nighttime feeding has to be in safer, areas where there is no speeding traffic. All litter has to be picked up. As far as community garbage is concerned, I think at the most we can appeal to our neighborhood residents, don't throw the garbage, put it at the designated spot. And normally there is collection every morning from the corporation. There is every morning the carts trundle out and they collect all the garbage, but then people still keep throwing. So we have to keep talking to our neighbors, don't throw the garbage, don't, this mentality of my house is clean and I can dump it on the road is unfortunately it's very built in to our psyche. And that is something we have to combat. But amongst our own, as personal feeders, we try and set an example that we will not litter. So if somebody is watching us, hopefully, as I talked about the ripple effect, that they would emulate it, and we keep talking to. I have spoken to a couple of schools. They have asked me to address their children. So I have spoken to schools, and this is the message that we can constantly give on habit forming, positive habit forming, which impacts every life that lives in that neighborhood. As far as train accidents and things concerned, in fact, one of my amputee cases, she's come from Bardhawan. She was run over by an engine. She lost a leg, and a second leg is non-functional. So she actually moves on two legs. I think we have to, when it happens say in Calcutta, then we would write into the respective authority, whether it is for garbage or whatever, ask for extra, signage, ask for more speed breakers. Those would be things that we would have to write into the municipality for and request help. Sometimes they will respond, sometimes they won't. So, but those would be at the official level. But what we can do, and we certainly do, is constant relating with the neighborhood, with the locals, with the actual people involved on the ground, to keep to keep a lookout for the dogs. If one goes missing, to immediately report it to the person. Has it been hit by a car? Has it not? We urge people to look under their cars before starting the car, whether it is summer, winter, or monsoon. Cats tend to go under the bonnet very often, especially in the winter. In fact, our driver was telling me just 2-3 days ago, he once drove around Newtown with a little, and they could hear a kitten's mews, and they couldn't figure out. They stopped the car and opened the bonnet and discovered this little kitten in there. So we try and urge whoever we can, people who are driving, people who we know, that to just check. It takes you half a second. Check under the car, check under the bonnet, that an animal is not there for whom it could be a threatening situation. So through efforts like that, it's how we try and make the difference.
Wonderful.
Be the difference.
Absolutely. Now, if resources weren't a constraint, what tools would, transform response times and outcomes when it comes to, emergency and things like that?
I think what really would help if there was an app. That there are some apps on vet availability and things, but an app which could connect caregivers to hospitals, to ambulances, where if we report an incident, that there's an accident or an ill dog or a case of abuse, we report it on the app, and the concerned NGO or group or volunteer picks it up and is able to then reach out for the help that is required. I think that kind of app would be really very, very
helpful,
useful. I believe Shimla, I was reading a few days ago, has introduced these collars for all the community dogs, which will have all the details of their age, gender, vaccination status, neutered status, locality, and things like that, which is actually an excellent initiative in keeping track of the dogs. But I think, yes, an app would be really ideal, where we can, log on to it and say, look, there's an injured dog. I've just got news, because we don't know everybody in every area.
Absolutely.
But through that, if it could connect hospitals, ambulance services, volunteers, caregivers, then it's just easier, because you're able to reach out, not just pan city, but maybe pan India as well. What is happening now is I've sent a message about a dog in Delhi. Now I may know 2 or 3 people in Delhi, so I forward it to them. But whether they are in a position to act immediately, not act immediately, it's maybe the middle of the night and they can't go out. Now maybe somebody else has reached the dog. So you always are left with this unsettled feeling, did that dog get help? So I don't know if it is at all possible to have some kind of pan city, pan India app like that, which would connect everybody on board.
Absolutely. You've just mentioned a very important point. I will talk to you about it later. Now, If another city ward wanted to copy Pause in Hope, what's in your Panchatantra playbook? First 90 days steps, metrics, legal, MOUs, and a minimum team that still delivers impact.
We would suggest to them that you first identify the core areas that you want to work in, which we did when we, as I said, initially for us, it was just sterilization, and treatment quickly followed, because we found a minute word got around that we would help raise money for sterilization. We got calls for treatment as well. And they're very difficult to ignore. If you know a dog is in tremendous distress, then you need to help, and we want to help. But then just wanting, it's very noble, but you need to have the cash to bolster it. So we have to be, I would advise them, you have to be very clear as to what you want to do. And I personally feel we should not have too many goals, because you end up delivering on none of them. You do a bit here and a bit there, and it's really very patchwork. So have a few goals and deal with them, add on to your abilities one by one. Like we started with sterilization, added treatment. Then we found cases of abandoned dog. I mean, as you said, you're every day, whether it's on WhatsApp or email or social media, constantly being bombarded with abandonment cases. So then we said, okay, let's try and help. We're not always successful. Some we are successful, and that's great rejoicing, but we're not always successful. Sometimes the animal does get dumped and then we hear nothing more of it. But we try and step in right at the beginning when the owner is wanting to just give the dog away, and no amount of talk is helping. So then we added that on. The idea of feeding and support came in when some of the group members said, we want to contribute rice. Somebody approached me. She stays I think in South Calcutta, and she approached me saying, I feed a lot of dogs. I had to leave my work because of health issues. I need help with rice. So one of our trust members, she promptly jumped in and she said, I will send her rice. I can't send her the entire amount, but I will send her a certain amount every month that is guaranteed. So then that came on as a fourth thing. And the shelter, in fact, was the last pillar to come on, because we were very keen on a small shelter with these, cases who would not be able to live on the road anymore. So we said, okay, now we are confident of having a small shelter. So we shouldn't bite off more than we can chew, and not, go into this, what seems to be this very bold initiative, and then find you're falling flat on your face because you don't have the personnel or the resources to fund it. So be very clear in what your goals are, identify them. And I think identify them as a group. The same, what we were saying, transparency within the group. The group has to be involved. It cannot be a decision of 2 or 3 people only. Because if you want the group to participate, the group to come forward, they must be a part of the discussion as well. So there has to be transparency. Keep your group involved all the time, because you will need them. You can't do it on your own. You will need them. So that is what we would advise somebody who would want to replicate us, that do it, set your goals, not too many of them, but goals that you can deliver on, because there's no point having, these vast, highly noble sounding goals and then doing nothing about it.
Saswati, coming to my last question of the show, finally a hard question, I would say. Which failure or near miss changed you most as a caregiver, and what would you ask listeners to do this week? One habit, 1 hour, or 1 rupee that truly helps.
I lost 2 dogs. I was already a very committed caregiver by then. One dog was a little pup I rescued in Delhi. My son was a national rider, so I had gone with him for the Delhi horse show. And where we were staying, in the lane behind, there was this man, tiny 2-month-old puppy, would be tied up outside their house all day, and he would beat it with his slippers, with the stick, and I just kept, I watched it 2 days. I went running every time I heard the pup cry, and my son, of course, said, "Ma, you're looking like one mad woman running down the street." I said, "No, I can't sit here in the room and see this going on." And eventually, on the fifth day, I persuaded him to give me the pup. They'd had a new baby, a baby girl, and they were so absorbed with her. This pup was like a hindrance. So I gave them an amount of money. I said, you please do something for your baby girl. She's come to you after, I think, 10, 12 years of marriage, they said. So please use it for her, but give me this pup. So they very happily gave me the pup. He was with us for 4.5 years, and he didn't eat the previous evening. And they all don't eat sometimes in the summer. They just go off their food. The next morning also, he didn't eat. And he came back and just flopped. The AC wasn't on, but the room was cold because the AC had been on at night. And he would do that very often after his walks, just come and flop. And we would call him Little Lord Fauntleroy. And I told my maid, I was leaving for school, I said, give him vanilla ice cream. He loves it. He's bound to have it. At 11 o'clock, she said, he's not eating the ice cream. I said, okay, I'm finishing my class and coming home. I'll take him to the vet. She called me 45 minutes later saying he's gone. I rushed back home. My daughter left college, came rushing back. We rushed him to the vet. They tried, but he was gone. And the vet suspected that it was probably his heart that gave up. And then we were putting pieces together, his exhaustion after a walk, his flopping down and resting for an hour. Maybe those were signs of a weak heart. But with a rescue dog and pup, you don't really know the entire, health history. So that really shook me because one, we were not with him when he went, and it just was like he didn't eat his evening meal the day before, and he didn't eat his morning meal. And they do that very often, as you know, when it's hot. So that shook, and I said, no, I can't let this happen again. There's something. So the idea started churning in my mind at that time. And a few years later, another dog came into my life. I wish I had kept her at home, but she lived just outside. This was all in Tollygunge Club when my husband, who's also Anil, he was the managing member, and she was abandoned in the club and she had terrible VG. So I got her treated, and I was hoping she would settle down with one of the groups of dogs in the club, but she would keep following me to the house, and she eventually took up residence just outside the gate. And when I would go on my feeding round, she would follow me. She would just walk with me. And if I told her to sit and wait, she would. She was like my shadow. And she got bitten by a couple of the other dogs who she used to play with, actually. And, that shook her. And I was treating her for the wound. She was on medication. And I would sit with her every night just before I went to sleep. I had made a little kind of kennel for her at the gate. And she would go trotting off after sitting with me for about half an hour. She would go trotting off for a loaf, and then she would come back half an hour, 45 minutes later, and go into her kennel and go to sleep. She would never look back when she trotted off. She would just happily bounce off. That night, she turned around and looked at me for a long time. And that struck me as odd. I said, she never does this. That was the last I saw of her. And we found her remains almost 2 weeks later in one of the little jungle areas of the club. That broke me even more because I just was not able to handle her death, the manner of her death, and the fact that she had turned around to look at me almost as though to say, bye, you're not going to see me again. And that completely cemented my belief that I have to do something, make this working with homeless animals, convert it into something more than just a passion. It has to become a way of life for me. Then COVID happened, 2020, COVID happened. And I left my teaching job just a month before lockdown because the classes were going into their board examination. I had taken them all the way up to my 10s and 12s. I was wanting to write my book. I write a lot, so I wanted to write my book. My mother was in a very bad way health-wise. I needed to take care of her a lot more than just that weekend. So I left my job and I said, now I want to go into working with homeless animals as a full-time thing. So I need to set up a trust. But it was spurred on first by the death of this little puppy whom I had rescued in Delhi. He lived only for 4.5 years with us. And then Ellie, who came along and who just disappeared. And when I found her, it was only her remains. So I think those were my two life-changing experiences or motivational forces, that it had to be something more than just, I love dogs. It had to translate into something which had a much larger impact. And if I had to ask people to do something this week, it would be, you said one habit, right?
Yes.
One habit every day, and that habit would be one kind act every day. I'm maybe because I'm 62 and I just repeat myself all the time, but for me, compassion, there can be no greater uh, virtue than compassion. And I feel compassion is actually courageous. It takes a lot of courage to be compassionate, especially in the face of people who are obstructing you. So just be kind, just one act of kindness every day, and it becomes a habit. That is what I would urge. Children,
Absolutely.
especially, because they tend to be more receptive.
Now, Saswati, this is where I come to the last section of my podcast, is where I leave an open mic for the guest if they want to talk about a pet project that they have. They're looking for support, or probably if they're looking for fundraise or something. I leave that absolutely open for an appeal from the guest.
Thank you, Anil, for giving Pause and Hope this opportunity to reach out through your wonderful podcast to other people of the work we do, and also for giving us this opportunity if we can ask for help. Yes, certainly any help would be appreciated. If you believe in whatever you have heard, if you believe in the work we do, if you would like to support us, whether it is for our shelter, where we have lost our shelter sponsor, so we are looking at somebody who would help us there, or with sterilization around the city, because that is the only humane way to bring down numbers. Culling, poisoning, beating, locking up in shelters is not the answer. It breeds a fresh new set of problems, and it's inhumane. And if we want to teach our children to be kind, we cannot be cruel. I think that's very essential for us as adults, as parents, as mature citizens of this country to accept, to learn, and to move ahead with. So if you would like to come forward to be a Pause and Hope sponsor for sterilizing, for treatment, for our shelter, please do reach out. I can give Mr. Matai our email ID. I can give him the QR code. We have income tax exemption to offer you. You will get the Form 10BE also at the end of the year. So your accounts are in order. We can offer you that support. And we would love to have you on board. Yes, financially, it makes a great difference to the work we do, but just to build up a community of people who care and people who reach out to touch another paw, another hand. Whether animal or human, we also help caregivers in winters. We try and give them blankets and shawls. So we're reaching out. The community is large. It's made up of 2-legged, 3-legged, 4-legged. And we want to be impact and help as many lives as possible. And in return, I feel I help myself. I'm certainly a much better person now. I feel more, I'm calmer, I'm quieter, and I'm very happy. I don't need adulation, applause. I'm just comfortable in my own skin. And so it's helped me. It may have helped a lot of others, but it has helped me. And if I feel blessed, I'm able to reach out further. So I will leave all of you with that appeal. If you do believe in us, if you do wish to support us, I would be very happy to share the details with Mr. Matai, who has been so gracious and so encouraging, and it has just been such a wonderful 1.5 hours with this podcast.
Saswati, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much for coming on board.
Thank you too. You have a wonderful evening ahead. And I hope all your podcasts are tremendous successes and you're able to reach a wide audience.
Thank you. Now, let me pause